All right, here we are, another edition of Red versus Blue. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
We had a real serious episode last week. I hope you get a chance to listen to it if you haven't already on the Israel-Hamas situation. I thought we covered it very well, and I want to direct you back to that. Now, this week, it's back to fun and games, I think, to some degree, with the politics that's going on here in the U.S. And, of course, we're going to start with the Trump trial, which is underway this week. And they've selected a jury, I understand, Keith.
They have selected a jury. 18 jurors and alternates total have been selected, 12 jurors and 6 alternates. It went at a pretty quick pace. Both sides used up their peremptory challenges relatively quickly. And they have a jury that's described as reflective of Manhattan and that it's highly educated. It's people who have financial experience. It's people who are wealthy enough to live in Manhattan and to be on juries. Usually they're retired people, but this is mostly people with careers. Speculation about whether that helps Trump. The prosecution would generally, in a financial crimes case, want an educated jury who can sort of understand the law. But on the other hand, some would argue that these are people who say, okay, he made a paperwork mistake. I do that in my business sometimes. I don't want to get caught. So we'll see where they go. But I think there's a general consensus. It's going to be a fair jury. The burden of proof, as always, is on the prosecution. And we're ready to start opening arguments on Monday.
I was thinking before we started about the psychological toll this must be taken on Trump, where he has zero control over anything to do with it. So it's got to be grating on him in that respect.
Well, it's not only grating, but it's humiliating. I mean, he was reduced to standing in front of the courthouse with a handful of printed out and stapled 8.5 by 11 newspaper articles that somewhat take his side. He was quoting from the Wall Street Journal, which has been critical of this trial, but has otherwise been scathing in its criticism of Trump himself,
right,
and saying, look at all these news stories that say this is a sham and they must be right. And he's sort of reduced to that's his message.
Well, we will see. It's about to get underway. It's about to get real, as they say.
Well, it is. And Mike, before we move from the trial, we should stop to pause to take a little of the humor off, because apparently in front of the courthouse today, just moments before we tape this, somebody lit himself on fire, literally with gasoline in front of the courthouse. And it appears to be a fatality. We don't know his motivation. We don't know which side he's on in all of this or his motivation for doing that. But it just shows the levels of anger, desperation, extremism, whatever you want to call it, that's in the country today. That's a true tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it is humorous, but that certainly doesn't fall into that category at all.
No.
Okay. I want to move on to the thing that is kind of humorous, and it involves donations to the Republican Party and the way Republican down ticket people will market themselves, right?
Right. Now, typically, and especially if you're running in a nonpartisan race for city council or county supervisor or a judge or something, in order to appeal to the people in your party, you sort of wrap yourself, if you've got the party endorsement in that, or if not, you wrap yourself in endorsement from other major Republicans. And even if you don't have the endorsement, you do what I did in 2008 when I was running for the city council, and you put yourself on a flyer with, in this case, John McCain and Sarah Palin, to show that I'm just one of the Republican guys, and you just keep voting straight down the ticket for all of us. And that's what you do. And that's an important factor for not well-known candidates to show that they are the party candidate. Democrats and Republicans do it both. It's typically something that's looked at as an advantage to the person at the top of the ticket because they're getting this free mail and exposure amongst the base and showing and demonstrating that they're the leaders of the party. But Trump has put a new spin on this, and he has demanded tribune of 5% of your fundraising take if you use Trump's name or image in any of your campaign mail or fundraising. Now, most local candidates don't really use him for fundraising, but they do use him to sort of, wrap the flag of Republicanism. This particular flyer, which cost me, I think, about $12,000 to mail when I was running for office, had I paid the 5% tribune, $6,000 would have to go to Donald Trump's campaign. And of course, I didn't raise any money off of this. This was something you spent money on.
For sure.
So interesting is that he's threatening to take it out on the consultants. If their candidates don't pay the tribute, the consultants will get less work with the Republican National Committee and with other campaigns that Trump has anything to say about going forward. Also, if you give more than 5%, you are looked on favorably by the Trump campaign. I have no idea what that means, but that's been offered. Ostensibly, they're doing this to prevent abuse and scammers from improperly using Trump's name to raise money. I can't imagine anybody doing that. Trump's pretty much got the market cornered on raising money in Trump's name. But yet, there we go. And we'll see if anybody pays the tribute and if anybody suffers punishment. We'll see in which states. I can't imagine anybody in California using Trump's name, frankly, except with very targeted groups of Republicans, which is the only place you'd use it anyway. But that's sort of the sad state of the Republican Party today and the scam that it's become. USA Today, I think, very accurately called this an extortion scheme. So there you go. Be careful with your small donations.
Wow. Amazing. And of course, the Republican Party itself, there's a stranglehold by the Trump people on the Republican Party. So they can demand this and maybe get something out of people, I would think.
Well, they'll certainly get some people who will participate in it. And yes, Trump has replaced the leadership of the RNC, veteran people who have done campaigns time and time again with his own true believers, and is taking control of the machinery and very clearly wants to take control of the money.
It's a brand thing, I guess. And brands are such an important thing. And I guess that's the way they're perceiving this, is that Trump is a brand. And if you want to use his brand, you've got to pay the piper.
Well, that's right. The only thing that I've ever seen that has even come close to this was when Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor. If you waited through the line and got your picture with Schwarzenegger, when you got the picture, there was a sticker on the back that said this picture can only be used for private display and cannot be published anywhere else. Now, when you read that, you sort of understand, okay, well, he's an actor and he's protecting his copyrighted image.
Sure.
Because he's going to go back and be an actor, after he becomes governor. And you sort of understood that. It was sort of odd. But it was the first time I'd ever encountered anything like that. But he never was asking for anybody for money, and he certainly didn't want to take of your campaign's treasury.
Right. Okay, let's move on. A fake news alert from Karl Rove, of all people.
Well, people, who don't think necessarily much of Karl Rove should listen to him. I think he's one of the smartest guys in politics. But he's told Democrats and Republicans to be prepared with this new AI world of fake campaigns. Meta has apparently tracked down 5 Chinese accounts that were actively providing political commentary. There are dozens from Russia. They generally appear to be supporting former President Trump in the campaign. One of the images that I saw had Trump kneeling and praying at a pew in a church, which right away tells you it's phony. He didn't even go to church on Easter. But has some sharp-eyed people have pointed out, if you count, he has 6 fingers on his right hand. So those are the kind of images that are going to be put out, and you see them now. And I notice them because I sort of get, Facebook from all sides.
Sure.
And you see a lot more images of, Trump, kneeling at Valley Forge, wrapped in a flag, or, Trump praying in a church he's never been to, or, God coming down and anointing Trump or whatever.
Sure.
All designed to pull on the heartstrings of, very identified voters through the algorithms that they use and to perk your emotions. And the Chinese and the Russians are going to be doing this in spades. So don't trust what you see on social media.
And that's not to say it isn't happening the other way as well. So keep your eye out. Keep your eye out on everything that you look at.
That's absolutely true. And it's particularly for the Democrats, the Hamas controversy. They're seeing the same thing there as you're seeing stories of atrocities. And there's plenty bad going on in Gaza. But a lot of it gets exaggerated and culled out specifically by a very well-organized group of pro-Hamas bloggers.
Okay, very quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. It'll be a short edition this week, but very quickly, can you sum up the GOP clown show that's been going on this past week?
Somebody took Michael Johnson into a briefing room and showed him what's really going to happen in Ukraine if he doesn't get off the dime and get the aid passed. And to his credit, Mike Johnson is a man of greater moral character and sterner spine than people thought he was. And he faced down the nutcase in the Republican caucus. He got a rule passed to get these measures to aid Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. A majority of the Republican caucus voted for it. A majority of the Democrats voted for it once they were sure the Republicans were going to vote for it. Now it's going to happen. Marjorie Taylor Greene who is apparently the queen of Moscow in terms of her exposure on Moscow television and the leading Putin fangirl, has been opposing this. She's got some of her Freedom Caucus supporters, but most of which have now been branded as really the fools that they are. Even Newt Gingrich came out and said, you can't govern by shooting yourself in the head every week. They have been sort of, identified for the fools they are. Speaker Johnson, to his credit, I think, has decided he's now going to move forward with this and do what's right, not only for America, but for our place as leader of the free world and for freedom. And it's both surprising and shocking, the degree of influence and support that the Putin regime has in the Republican caucus. And hopefully they will be thoroughly marginalized by the time this is all over.
Now, isn't the bad news for Johnson the fact that it only takes 2 or 3 people to vacate him from the position, and that is possible at this point?
It takes 2, and they have been identified, and most people believe that the Democrats will either by abstaining themselves or absenting themselves or otherwise providing the votes will keep Johnson in the speakership because, they see the opportunity to be the grown-ups in the room, and Republicans appear hell-bent to let them.
And of course, that just makes those angry Republicans even more angry when the Democrats work with the Republicans.
That's exactly what they don't want to have happen. And so it just marginalizes them further. Their agenda they have no agenda. It's pointless. It's to create chaos. And they have been stymied, apparently, in that effort on the stage.
It's time to bring back compromise in government.
Compromise entirely. It's a good word.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we covered the week pretty well and very quickly, but you've got a little history lesson for us.
Well, you always want to review history because you risk repeating it if you don't. And I just finished an excellent biography of Hubert Humphrey called True Believer, who faced many of the same issues that President Biden is facing today. This is him speaking. He says, the emphasis here in Washington is on the black. It's on Harlem. It's on the ghetto. Every time we continue to pound that emphasis, the blue-collar worker reacts negatively. It isn't that he's against the black or the poor. In fact, he would like to help. He just feels that everybody in government has forgotten him. He pays his taxes and kids fight in the wars, but he doesn't imagine the government's helping us. That's something that Joe Biden could say tomorrow. In fact, he probably will say it tomorrow.
Right.
But it tells you how politics stays the same. And Hubert Humphrey, I had great sympathy for him because he was a guy who, more than anybody else in 1948, moved the Democrats away from segregation and the Dixiecrat movement. By the new civil rights plank in the Democratic platform, changed the entire party. But by 1968, the party had changed once again, and he was odd man out in terms of his ideas, his philosophy, certainly his relationship with Lyndon Johnson in the war.
Right.
But it helps you appreciate that there were people in Congress like Hubert Humphrey who were willing to work across the aisle to fight for change and to lose and come back and fight another day. We could use more people like him today.
Comes back to that word again, compromise.
Absolutely.
All right. That does it for another edition of Red versus Blue. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do on Spotify. Like us on Facebook. And we'll be back next week for another edition of Red versus Blue.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.